Welcome you here today. We're going to call the board meeting to order and get started for today. We should have another board member show up here shortly. We have Wayne, who is on the phone with us, I believe. You're still there today, Wayne?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. First order of a item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We've had a chance to review those minutes. Are there any changes or approval in order? Move to approve.
I second.
Been seconded. There's 4 sets of minutes that were okay with that. All 4 sets.
Yes.
4 sets. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Are you okay with that, Wayne?
Yes.
Thank you. We will move on then to our projects for the day. First on the agenda is the feasibility reports. We have Weber Basin Water Conservancy District. And we have Crystalline Lista Bravo, Accountant Budget Officer, here with us. Do you want to come up to this table up there, and you might as well move to the hot seat. Ashley Nay, welcome back. So we're going to have a presentation by Ben. Right, and then there's Randy. Welcome, Randy. We have a full board present today. Go ahead, Ben.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The Weber Basin Water Conservancy District is coming before the board today. They provide water to approximately 18,000 connections throughout Davis and Weber counties. They also provide water to many secondary retailers who in turn provide water to thousands of connections throughout those 2 counties. From the year 2010 to 2060, they're expected, or the population in their service area is expected to approximately double. And existing contracts for water equal about 83% of their current reliable yield supply. In 2008, in an effort to meet the governor's 25% reduction in water use by 2025, and in an effort to decrease per capita water use in their area, they began installing water meters, and as of today, they've installed approximately 8,650 secondary water meters. Here's a map of the service area. This includes, or not the service area, but the area of the proposed project. It includes West Bountiful and Woods Cross, where the secondary water meters will be installed. Here's a little graphic depicting the meters that are expected to go in. In the upper left-hand corner, there is a small component of the project that was taken out of the project, so you can ignore that little hydropower section, but you can see there all the meters that are planned to go in as part of the project. It includes the installation, the proposed project includes the installation of 2,850 water meters, and construction is supposed to begin this month and continue in the fall and spring months through April 2022. And as I previously said, it's part of the larger effort to install meters all throughout the system. Benefits to the project: they expect to conserve approximately 1,100 acre-feet per year from this section of the project. Currently, they pump water out of the Sunset Aquifer through a series of 3 wells to when they have water shortages, and decreased pumping from the aquifer is seen. It will be a benefit to the aquifer, but also it'll decrease their power consumption through that pumping. They have also attained a $600,000 Water Smart grant, which is a major benefit to this project and to these the people here in the project zone. The total cost of the project comes to $3,762,000. and staff recommends that the board authorize 71.5% of the project cost up to $2,688,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1.0% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $208,000, and that includes reserves. That's also staff's report.
Thank you very much, Ben. The project folks, do you have anything you'd like to add, or?
We're happy to take any questions if you have them on the project, but
Mr. Chairman, I'll just, not necessarily, maybe a couple of questions, comment, and then prepared to make a motion. I think I asked this when we met, Ashley, before, when we met in the scoping meeting. Most of these installations will be front of yard versus back of yard. You have a percentage there as to what those will be?
Yes, they're actually all going to be front yard connections where our budget shows, we just bid out for the project that's starting this year, and the bid right now is $1,200 per front yard meter. In the Woods Cross West Bountiful area, we've counted that there are about 750 backyard connections, but none of those will be a part of this project.
That'll be phased in at a later date?
Yes.
Okay. Well, just a comment, Mr. Chairman, and that is that, Weber Basin has been very progressive, as was indicated by Ben. When they first started, this project and have maintained that aggressive nature in maintaining or installing secondary metering as a means of conserving water throughout their service area. So I'd like to make the motion that, excuse me. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
With the secondary meters that you've installed previously, what has been your experience with maintenance, life expectancy, that type of thing? And with the meters you're going to use, are they the same type as the old ones, or have you gone to a newer generation? Or what's been your experience with the 7,000 meters you've already used?
So I know this is kind of predating me a little bit. I've only been with Weber Basin for almost a year. So what I remember from the history is they've used two different kinds of meters before, and now we're with the Census iPearl, and we've had the best luck with the Census iPearl. They've got a 20-year warranty time. And so that's why the loan is the 15 years. And we haven't had to replace any of those. Do you have more?
I do know that we have an agreement with Census iPearl. They have tested our water quality, so that 20-year warranty is not like what they give to everybody. It is something they have put in writing and given to us specifically because they know our water quality. So it has a 15-year full replacement, and then another up to 20 years. That last 5 years is actually a prorated amount. But we have had a great track record with these ones in their durability and them lasting. We haven't had to replace too many.
Are there any other questions from the board or anybody? If not, I guess we're ready.
I'll go ahead. I would make the motion that the board authorize 71.5% of the project cost up to $2,688,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 15 years with annual payments of approximately $208,000, including reserves.
Questions on the motion?
Second to the motion.
Second it? Are there any questions on that motion? If none, we'll call for all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. That will stand approved then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next project today is West Cache Irrigation Company. Nope, Pleasant Grove City.
Those are the hot seats. I don't sit there.
All right. Is it a click?
Okay, along with the presenter, we have Marty Beaumont, John Schweiss,
Geese, yeah.
and Matt
Dugdale.
Dugdale. We appreciate you folks being here today, and hopefully the board will have some questions for you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Pleasant Grove City supplies culinary water to approximately 8,800 connections. About 8,300 of those are residential connections. They also provide secondary water through a pressurized system with more than 7,000 connections. And they receive water, so this is Pleasant Grove City, and we'll zoom in on some of these dots a little bit more. But they receive, there we go, good. The water comes down through here. There's Battle Creek and Grove Creek through here. They already have existing screening, and they do have existing filtration systems. When there's high spring runoff, there's a lot of sediment in the water, and they even have some issues in low runoff when they get some algae buildup. And the filtration system, screening systems are just not able to fully clean the water before delivery, and sometimes they actually have to shut down the system to flush things out, which means the supply is not fully reliable when they've got to shut it down. And also, a lot of their customers are having to clean out the filters that are on their own connection. So this is the Battle Creek debris. So we're going to zoom in on some of what's going on over here in the inlet. You can see a lot of mud. You can see all of that. But trying to filter that out, and then on top of that, as Wayne Anderson had noted in the briefing meeting, that they then have to clean out these debris basins at some point with all of this. And is this a customer screen that they have to clean? So a lot of customer complaints, a lot of phone calls. So it's the city council actually asked you to jump on this and get things figured out. So they're trying to do this before we hit the next season next year. Marty's life will be much nicer in the office if they can. And then this is a time when they're trying to flush things out. So you see we've got a little bit, the project wouldn't be measurable in necessarily water conservation, but as you can see, there's got to be some water losses from having to flush the system. So they're planning to put in 3 filter stations, and they're gonna put those in Central Utah's vaults. And they're working on agreements with Central Utah on those, and also do some upgrades to their screening at their intakes for Battle Creek and Grove Creek. The map also showed a new filtration building, and that is the one we talked about briefing meeting that is no longer part of this. There is going to be some work done there, but not necessarily a new building. So the expectation is that with this project, they'll get cleaner water and more reliable system if they're not having to shut it down to clean things up. And they said while there was some discussion of sediment buildup on the lawn, it actually isn't too bad because you see those filters capture so much of it, but then things get clogged up. Reduce the customer complaints, reduce staff and customer labor to clean out the systems, and reduce some of those water losses due to the system flushing. So the cost estimate at this time is $2.5 million. They're asking that the board cost share $1.8 million. So they're actually coming in with 28%, which is quite a bit more than usually the sponsors, the applicants come in with. And staff recommends that the board authorize 72% of the project cost up to $1.8 million, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 25 years with annual payments of approximately $95,000, and that includes reserves. And as we had some discussion in the briefing meeting, and also as noted in the report, they, based on their median adjusted gross income, they are beyond the board's affordability for their cost of water, and that's where the reduced interest rate came into play to help them out with that. And that's staff's report.
Thank you. Do you folks have anything you would like to add to that? I'm sure you've got complaints. Those are fun.
They are fun to deal with, and I think the 2 years, so last year we had a shortage of water and we had a ton of moss coming down the system, and that was further visible. Last year, we had a lot of complaints there. And then this year, we had so much water that even today, we've got water flowing out of those canyons that we've never seen in the past. And so we had to deal with all the sediment load throughout this year. And it was, my council came to me about 2 months ago and just says, we have to fix these problems. And I'm like, well, there's money involved in that, and we've got to find a way to pay for that and try to get them resolved. And so this would be a huge benefit to our residents, to our staff, is being able to maintain these systems. These are things that we've known are things that would be benefits to our system, but just financially are difficult to handle. And so we appreciate your consideration with regards to this funding, and will greatly help our systems.
Thank you. Wayne, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think it's pretty well covered, and I'm prepared to make a motion.
Questions from the board first, Wayne?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a question. I'm just curious, from an engineering point of view, the filtration system and the Conservancy District's vaults are part of it. What type of filtration system are you in the process of designing or have designed that does both sediment and moss?
Yeah.
Both the same thing, and is it self-cleaning? What's the mechanism of it?
Sure. We've been in a lot of discussion over these last couple of months, actually, and it's happened over the last few years because we've kind of been planning to do these over time. Central Utah Water Conservancy District provides a number of municipalities water, and what they do is they have a number of different types of filters. There's the Almiod filters that are pretty popular. There's also the other one, the VAF filtering system, and they've had results of how well those have worked on both of those. And we've been coordinating with Central Utah Water Conservancy District on which ones they feel would be the best for those vaults. And they've said that the Almiod filters have been really successful for them. As far as maintenance and upkeep, and that's something that they actually do in our agreement with them, because the filters are actually installed in their vaults at their diversions. They actually maintain those, and then we pay a maintenance fee for those. And that was kind of their recommendation, is they're more compact, they're a little bit more effective and easier for them to maintain. They've had experience with them, and so that's the direction we're moving as well, is to try to do something that they've had a lot of experience with over the years, because there's a number of municipalities that have filtration systems already on their system, and so we're kind of moving in that direction. Did that answer the question?
Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, just how do you spell Almiod?
Almiod, it's A-M-I-A-D. Almiod, A-M-I-A-D, I believe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No other questions? I guess we're ready for a motion out there, Wayne.
Okay. I move the board authorize 72% of the project cost up to $1,800,000, and that the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 25 years, with annual payments of approximately $95,000, including reserves.
Motion's been seconded. Are there any questions on the motion? No questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Keeping your citizens happy. Move on now to the next project in the committal of funds area. This first project is Mapleton Irrigation Company. And Wayne, this is your project again, I believe, and Marissa is going to make a presentation on it.
We'll explain what it is.
Yeah.
And before John Sheesh walks out all the way, he is from Utah State, so I feel they're in pretty good hands. So I think we're good there.
Go Aggies.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that? Is that okay, Todd Adams? All right. So this is Mapleton Irrigation Company, and did we already? Okay, sorry.
We have Lane and Mike here representing.
Yes, I'm Mike.
So,
Looked around for Lane Jensen for some reason.
Sorry, Marissa, go ahead.
Okay, there we go. These two know it all about this system.
There you go.
All right, this is for Mapleton Irrigation Company. This project was authorized back in March of this year. They have continued to work on this project, refine the design, listen to more people in his backyard saying, hey, don't forget about me. Is that about right, Mike? So the purpose of the project is to replace approximately 3 miles of existing canal pipe and box culverts with a new 24-inch non-pressurized HDPE pipe. So this is where we've got the pipe coming through. And so this town of Mapleton, oops, sorry. There we go, kind of zooming in a little bit more. So at this point, they're looking at committal of funds. They're doing all the things that they need to with easements and rights of ways and the design as well. The project will also include new inlet and outlet structures. And when it was authorized for the board authorized $961,350 or 67.2% of the project. They've done some more refining on this project, and there's also now a new terminal structure, a traveling screen, and the turnouts, as we discussed before. There were 6 originally, now there's 14. So those are some of the additional costs. And even though the project has increased the cost estimate by almost $200,000, they're only asking the board for just an additional just under $40,000. So staff recommends the board commit 61% of the project cost up to $1 million, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 22 years with annual payments of $45,700. That's staff's report.
Thank you, Marissa. Mike, Elaine, do you want to have any questions or comments to make about the project?
No, we've put it out to bid. We received some bids back as of yesterday to see if we were where we needed to be, so we can go up ahead. And so we're just finishing up the last of the stuff so we can award the contract. And here we are to make sure we get the money before we do that, and hopefully be putting pipe in the ground, hopefully by the end of November.
System's non-pressurized, but this is pressurized, right?
There will be,
It'll make some
it'll
pressure.
make some pressure, but it'll be HDP for the whole distance, because we're gonna slip line a portion of it through a bunch of existing homes.
Any questions from the board?
Question on your finances. Part of it's Water Smart. Do you have your Water Smart grant in hand?
Yep, it's done. We've got it done. We've got the Forest permit taken care of. We've got our environmental stuff, all that done. I think we're waiting on one little thing left that was not DWR, but the other one.
What's the DWR?
The DWR, we're waiting on a little, because there's a little spot that's, like a 400 or 500 feet that it goes across, 1,000 feet, so.
When was the original system put in? Do you remember? Long time ago.
The newest part of it was put in 1952. I'm guessing there's still parts that were done in the 1800s with a horse and.
Been there a while.
And our problem is now they're building all the homes below it. And so we're trying to get ahead of the curveball and get it put in so it's buried and we don't have to worry about the evaporation and the seepage and all those things.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the board? Wayne, do you have any comments or questions about the project?
No, I just think it's a very positive project, and it'll help them out, and it'll save water and make things a lot easier. And then the safety issue is something that will be helped out positively as well.
Thank you. Are you prepared to make a motion on this project, Wayne? If you are, go ahead.
Okay, I move the board commit 61.5% of the project cost up to $1 million, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over approximately 22 years with annual payments of $45,700.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Are there any questions on the motion? Being none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That motion passes, and good luck with your project, finishing it up. Okay, we're gonna move on to West Cache Irrigation Company. And, Todd, we still missing Russell, so
Yeah, he's
we're
still
glad to have you here.
under the weather a little bit, so he asked me to fill in for him.
Okay, well, appreciate it, Todd.
Hopefully he doesn't regret that.
He won't if it's approved.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, in January, the board authorized the project to replace 5.3 miles of the West Cache irrigation ditch with pressurized pipe, construct 2 pump stations, and install 4 new flow meters and other appurtenances. Since that time, the applicant has obtained an additional $400,000 Water Smart grant. So the board previously authorized 60.7% of the project cost, up to $2.125 million, and that the project would be purchased at 1% interest over 25 years with annual payments of $100,000. Because of the additional Water Smart grant, the amount of money that they need from the board has decreased, so we just need to, before we commit funds, make that change. And that's a no-brainer that you probably will approve that, so we didn't invite them to come and answer questions of why they got extra money.
Why they went down.
Yeah. So with the additional Water Smart grant included, staff recommends the board commit 51% of the project cost up to $1,785,000, and that the project be purchased at 1% interest over approximately 25 years with annual payments of $81,100. This is staff's report.
Sure they'll be happy with the reduction of $19,000 on their,
Well,
or their
yes,
annual bill.
I hope so.
Have any questions from the board? Seeing none.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion on project RE 421 that the board commit 51% of the project cost up to $1,785,000 and that the project be purchased at 1% interest over approximately 25 years with annual payments of $81,100.
We have a motion. Do we have a second on that? Are there any questions on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Are there any opposed? That motion passes then, and they'll continue with their project. Okay, we'll move on now to the our special reports. Don't have anybody from Cove here, so, oh, they're here? Oh, they just came. Okay. Come on down, gentlemen, I'll let you introduce yourselves. Well, let's see, well, we do have you signed in, so we got Brett and Randy and Chad. We welcome you gentlemen here. Thank you for coming. And Tom, will give the time to you for staff to report.
All righty. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Cove Waterworks Company provides culinary and irrigation water to 24 connections and 1 church connection in the community of Cove, located in Cache Valley, almost to the Idaho border. They have 28 shares in their company and 1 share per connection. So there's currently 3 shares that aren't being utilized at this time. They obtain their water from Atkins Springs, if I can get just right in this area, and a well, which the board helped fund in 2009, which is down here, and also another spring that's up in this area just off the map here. During the springtime, the water in Atkins Springs sometimes becomes turbid, which kind of indicates that there may be a surface influence to the spring. So the Division of Water, or Drinking Water, the regulatory, the bad guys, has given them some options. They can either improve the spring, they can build a treatment plant to treat the water that comes out of the spring, or they can abandon the spring as a drinking water source. Also, the system that was put in, there's a water tank up by the spring, and then 2-inch transmission pipeline that carries the water into the community. That was installed in the 1950s, so that the life of the transmission pipeline is pretty much shot. The company has replaced a section in the middle that was giving them some extra trouble, but they're now before the board to ask for funding to do the improvements in Atkins Spring and replace the 2-inch pipeline with 4-inch PVC pipe, and also another little section of pipeline that will serve five homes along this area. The cost estimate of the project is about $250,000. Oh, the project benefits, can't forget those. The project will benefit the company as Atkins Springs will be upgraded to meet Division of Drinking Water standards. The undersized transmission pipeline will be replaced and their transmission pipeline capacity will increase. So the project cost is $250,000, and it's proposed that the board authorize and commit $212,500, or 85% of the project cost, and that the project will be purchased at 0% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $7,100. And that's staff's report.
Do 1/3 of the whole town, you 3 gentlemen here, you have any comments? Small town. Hey, that's all right. We all like small towns.
You're 10%.
Have any comments? Anything you'd like to add, or?
Anything you want to say?
No, he covered everything pretty well.
Okay, thank you. How much questions from the board? Blaine?
Just curious on this spring, what's the year in, year out, what's the average flow of the spring?
Approximately 20 gallons per minute
Once a minute.
is what there is now. Now, we could be losing water. Once we do this reclamation, we may gain some. We just don't know at this point. But about 20 gallon a minute as we measure the water coming in is, you know, it'll fall a little bit in the fall, it'll go down a little bit, but that's a pretty good average.
Have a storage tank up by the spring, it says.
Yes, it's a 20,000 gallon concrete storage tank.
Well, have storage with it?
No, the well is used specifically for secondary water when the pressure drops. There's a pressure valve on the well that will kick in directly to the transmission line to boost the pressure up.
Question?
I had a question. Some of the information that was provided to the board in the feasibility report indicated that Cove Waterworks Company had a license with Department of Commerce, but it's currently lapsed.
That's been fixed. We're in good standing with the Department of Commerce.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of that when it come to light, but we got that taken care of.
Mr. Chairman, Larry or Brett, did you guys just take care of that yourselves, or do you have legal counsel that's helping you with this, or are you fixed?
No, we took care of that ourselves, Randy did. as far as getting that done, but we do have legal counsel.
Take care of the legal requirements on the
Yes.
loan. Okay. Right.
One question that came up during our work session was the fire hydrant issues. Are these on the fire system?
The culinary water, our culinary system, in fact, both culinary systems in Cove are not tied to the fire. The fire hydrants and the fire protection are under the Webster Irrigation Company. They keep that charged all winter long, and that's where the fire hydrants are tied to.
That was the question as to whether it was charged during the winter or not, so.
No, it comes from a different source, the irrigation line.
Okay, we have a question here.
So you just mentioned 2 systems, and we read about 3 in the feasibility report. I assume there's been discussions in the past about consolidating those. I'm just wondering about that.
Not recently, over the years, there has been, but it was always, there's actually 3 main systems in the town of Cove. There's High Creek Culinary, ours, Coveville Culinary, and the Goslin Spring. And anytime that discussion came up, at one point, High Creek had just put in a bunch of pipe and they'd spent a bunch of money and they didn't want to let anybody else in. And then when we put the well in, we was kind of the same way. Well, we've done this now. It's ours. It's tight. We're in good shape. And now Goslin just redid theirs and they put a bunch of money in it. So it's like it's working now. Why change it? So
Okay.
that's, there's never been a actual discussion as far as getting everybody in. There's just been some general questioning and it just never went anywhere.
Well, if it could, it might be a beneficial thing. Multiple sources, and you could rely on each other, yeah.
Any other questions on this? Charles, or you?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion on project RE 429 that the board authorize and commit 85% of the project cost up to $212,500, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $7,100.
Second.
That motion's been made and seconded. Are there any questions on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there?
Aye.
Thank you. Are there any opposed? I don't forget you, Wayne. I just get a little in a hurry.
Well, that's all right. I'm easily forgotten.
Well, we don't want to forget you. You've got a dance to do later, remember?
Yeah, that's what I've been told, but you've got me, am I on top of the table now?
You're just coming through space.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
gentlemen.
Randy,
Appreciate it.
Brett, and
Thanks,
Chad.
Rob. Appreciate you. Go back and boost up the population again.
Too much.
We're going to move on now to the Burns Bench Irrigation Company project. Jacqueline, I believe you're going to make a presentation, and we have with us Troy Osler and Monty Pratt. We welcome you here. Thank you. Jacqueline, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, this project was originally authorized back in June 2017, but there have been significant changes to the project design, cost estimate, and board share. The proposed project is located 5 miles northwest of Jensen in Uintah County. The Burns Bench Irrigation Company provides irrigation water from Brush Creek. There are currently 306 shares distributed among 25 shareholders, and the applicant previously received financial assistance from the board in 1960 and 1961. The Burton Ditch Irrigation Company and the Murray Ditch Pipeline, Inc. are also current users of the system, and they will be working with the applicant to pay for their portion of the project. The current distribution system consists of an inlet structure, a settling basin, open canal, and an earthen pond that connects to a pressurized system. The applicant's current inlet structure does not adequately remove sediment before it enters the pressurized system, and the sediment settles in the pipes and wheels, leading to high maintenance costs and an increase of water to flush the wheel lines. The proposed project consists of installing a radial gate at the diversion structure, and that will allow regular flushing of the sediment away from the intake. Additionally, 1,300 feet of 42-inch HDPE pipe and 1,700 feet of 24-inch HDPE pipe will be installed to enclose the existing canal and eliminate the earthen pond. And that is depicted here in the map. And these are just a couple of pictures of the inlet and the settling basin. Benefits of the project include reduced maintenance and on-farm costs, reduced amount of sediment entering the system, and they will conserve approximately 232 acre-feet of water annually. The estimated cost for this project is $667,000, and the applicant has secured $445,000 in grants from the Bureau of Reclamation, Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, and the Uintah Water Conservancy District. And they are asking for $189,000 or 28.3% of the project. Staff recommends the board authorize and commit 28.3% of the project cost up to $189,000, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $9,450. That is staff's report.
Questions? You have any comments?
Just one question. Looks like, so are you gonna have to rehab that old pond and clean it all up, or are you gonna be able to just pipe through it?
We're going to pipe through the existing canal or pond, but it's kind of already created its own channel because the pond is full. And then we'll utilize the dirt or the soil to cover the pipe and then rehab it and turn it back to its owner. That is one part of that's we lease that from one of the farmers in the area. We'll turn that back over there to them, and they can start utilizing that ground.
Hey, that was my understanding when we went up and looked at it, whenever it was, we were up to it, and just wanted to make sure that that was taken care of and it wouldn't be a sore spot down the road. That's good.
Yeah, the farmer is very happy that we're turning the big chunk of ground back to him so that.
Oh, yeah, it'll allow him to utilize it and
Yep.
farm it.
And he already utilizes sections of it now that have filled in, so.
Okay.
He's very happy that we're going to do this.
Well, I think your radial gate, the ability to raise it in those storm events will change the sediment you're dealing with immensely, so. Looks
Absolutely.
like you've came up with a good plan to address your problems, so good job.
Mr. Chairman, just a curiosity, when I was doing the calculation on your assessments, it came down to like $16.67 an acre to $6.70 an acre to $2.60 an acre. Is water that inexpensive in your area?
Well, it's according to the ditch company, yes. For that area, yeah.
And you have additional costs on top of your ditch
We have
assessment.
our annual assessments for the maintenance for the ditch rider these will be added to it.
Oh, these cost figures in here are not everything in your cost to run your irrigation system per acre.
Right.
Correct. There is one other thing that I wanted to mention, that the other benefits that have come out is, when you saw the pictures, I didn't realize Jacqueline was going to show the pictures, but the ditch rider has to crawl over the open canal. We have currently we have a rotating screen or a traveling screen that pulls that stuff off the top. In order for him to get to there, he has to crawl around there, and it's actually quite dangerous. So by doing this, we're going to be able to automate move the rotating screen, automate the gates, and keep him away from the flow of the water by the automation and as well.
Thank you.
Have any other comments that you'd like to add? Questions or comments from the board? Not Randy, I guess we're ready for you to make a motion.
I move the board authorize and commit 28.3% of the project cost up to $189,000, and the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $9,450.
Second that.
Okay, that motion's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries then. Thank you, Jacqueline. Appreciate it. Good luck with your project, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move on to Summit Creek Irrigation Canal Company. We have with us today Todd Rowley. Welcome, Todd. And Ben, I believe you're going to make a presentation to us.
That's right. So Summit Creek Irrigation Company, we've been working with them for quite a few years. As I mentioned to the board earlier, Joe Williams was associated with the multi-phase project with this canal company, and I was brought in once I started several years ago. And since that time, I've worked with this company. As part of the project that the board's been working on with them for years, there's this dam that the canal company has used for flood routing and flood control, which they call Dam Number 1, right? In 1984, this dam was breached due to structural concerns. It was rebuilt in 2012 using funds from the Board of Water Resources. The part that was breached was repaired, so there's a new section, an old section on this dam. Because of the lack of a really good water year since that time, this year was the first time that dam was put into use. As it started to fill, it became apparent that the old section on the dam was leaking in many locations. Serious erosions began to occur. The canal company built a temporary diversion around the dam, which unfortunately exacerbated the erosion because the water was percolating into the soil and resurfacing down below the bottom of the dam. And then they were ultimately ordered by the Division of Dam Safety to breach the dam to prevent catastrophic failure. And in the meantime, they were pumping water out. They had multiple pumps there. We're running those 24 hours a day. They had many people involved, lots of equipment there, and unexpected monetary losses to the canal company exceeded, the canal company and their partners exceeded $70,000. And because of these losses, the canal company is seeking a reprieve on their, or at least modification to the terms of their purchase agreement. I've got here just a couple of photos that show the breach that was made. And Todd brought some photos also on a jump drive. I might show you some of these. So this is the upper section of the breach, and this here is a photo of the lower section. Here's the dam here, is that right, Todd? Do you want to talk through these?
This is a picture that was taken with a drone in 2018. So we had put a little water in that year, but it didn't ever, I mean, just a couple feet as we were testing the gates for the reservoir number 2, which you can see to the upper right. So you can see where the breach was filled. It's the, I guess, gravelly portion against the old part of the dam. And so this was just a photo that we had on file. But as you continue through the photos, and I don't know if they're not in any particular order, but this is us doing the breach. You can see the 2 pumps that we're currently using to lower the amount of water so that we could do more of a controlled breach, as we like to call a dry breach as opposed to a wet breach. A wet breach typically causes a lot of erosion and can cause damage downstream. And so in the meantime, with the thought process of dam safety, we decided that we'd try and pump that as low as we could. But as water continued to increase in the springtime, there's no valve to turn water off from this overflow. And so we were trying to pump faster than we were getting water in, and we did make quite a bit of progress and were able to bring that breach in. The breach is in the location where the original breach was in 1984. Most of the runoff was coming through the new repair as opposed to the original old portion of the dam. Yeah, so this was on April 29th when a lot of the damage was happening. The original dam and the repair was meant to just slow the ups and downs of the high water. Downstream, we're able to take 30-second feet and run through Highline Canal system and put into White Lake, there a portion of Utah Lake. So you can see there's a 12-inch pipe that's right on the bottom that's always open, and you can see that coming through, and then the overflow that's on the top as that comes up and down would account for the 30-second feet as was designed. As you can see, the water was starting to come through where the new portion was put together, and trying to take pressure off of that, we began digging a line around the new portion, or trying not to mess with the dam, but creating a new overflow. As Ben mentioned, that changed a little bit of the flow of the water, and we began deteriorating on the east side instead of just the south side. Yeah, so that's just another picture. We've added the pumps at this point. And we filled in the portion that we tried to dig around, hoping that they would stop. And you can see that the water level is coming down. And then this is a picture of after the breach. This is minutes after we finished the breach, and you can see the water start to come down the new breach. And so this is finished, wrapping up. We've moved the pumps out. And fortunately for us, we have Santaquin City building a road project, and they're building through a hill that contains one rock, and a very big rock. And as they've been trying to cut up those rock pieces, then we've been able to utilize some of the rock as riprap. I think we've gone through them all, yep.
Staff recommends that the board amend the purchase agreement to delay principal payments by 1 year with interest-only payment due in 2019, and regular payments will resume in 2020, and that is staff support.
How much is that? You meant to,
5,000.
What's that?
how much of the payment that would be abated?
The payment, the annual payment now is approximately $95,000, and then the interest-only payment will be about $40,000.
Questions from the board?
Question, what's your future plans with the dike on this? Rebuilding, repairing, just keep it bypass? What's your plans down the road?
We'll probably keep it a bypass. The level of water that it could hold potentially, we felt that, it would cost a lot more money to make it safe. The old part of the dam, in the old designs that we show, shows that it has a clay liner on the inside or a clay core, where the new design never implemented a clay core, and we feel like that's possibly why it began failing on the new side. And we feel that we can still utilize the lower portion, as there is a little bit of a basin to the dam, and we're hoping that that's sufficient to take care of us in most high water needs. So, and by utilizing Highline Canal and the 32nd feet, we can start, allowing more water to go that way earlier. And so our plan is just shifted a little bit. It's not necessarily gone away.
Questions on this project?
So the way that you're leaving the dam safety's happy with what you're leaving?
As far as I heard, yes.
Well, I would make sure, because as I look at your pictures, that's sad that they didn't put a core in a repair on an existing dam, but it doesn't look real favorable just from the pictures you've shown, and even with what's been done to date, doesn't look, I'd hate to walk away from it looking that way personally.
Well, we hate to walk away. We are going to get more riprap from Santaquin City. In fact, they're putting it onto our property today. And we hate to walk away from it because we felt like we spent a lot of money for a facility that could be used for, years and years and years. And to have it fail in the first year that we really implement a good test on it, we felt like the money that we've spent, and we still need to pay that portion of the loan, which is money that we borrowed from you people. So, I don't know what the future is for it. So, but for now, we're gonna utilize it the way it is.
Well, I would just make sure you're good with dam safety and you don't have issues that crop up, because any of them I've ever breached, it was a lot more substantial breach than what I see in this picture, and you're still holding some depth of water. I don't know what it is, but...
Well, there's no water at this point, and most of the year there isn't water in that at all.
Right.
But in a high water year, just because of the different places to take water, there is no way to turn the water off. We don't have a way to turn water off in the Santaquin debris basin, and then when it gets to the reservoir, it only holds so much before it overflows. And whether we can let some out at the bottom, to go to this route early is what we try and do. Our plan has always been to try and guess where our water's going to be, and by our studies, if we can maintain an empty reservoir on reservoir number 2 by February 1st, we could still fill that with high water or non-high water spring runoff and still maintain the water for irrigation purposes. And so that's the method that we've been running for the last few years, since 2012, when we did make this, knowing that this would be kind of our safety valve for higher water going into Genola City. But since then, as different phase to this project. In 2012, we didn't have a route through Genola City. And in 2016, was it 16 that we put the pipe through? We used Utah County and Strawberry Highline were very, they helped us out quite a bit on getting this pipeline through down to White Lake. It benefited Highline Canal as they got some of their canal piped, and it helped Utah County as they're kind of our flood. They're in charge of the flooding, I guess, and it benefits us as we are able to use 32nd feet running through that pipe. And so that's something that happened after 2012, and so it makes this dam not quite as valuable as originally thought of.
Questions from the board?
We did have Wayne Anderson came and looked at it, and he put eyes on it. And
Wayne, you're on.
Well, I did meet with him and go over it, and I guess the one question that I had, and it doesn't need to be discussed now, but I was kind of disappointed because when that old breach was repaired and that clay core was not put in, I guess my question was, why didn't dam safety do something about that construction at that time rather than just filling that old breach with gravel, which is going to be porous and end up having the same situation that did develop? So that was the question that came to my mind as I looked at the whole scenario and looked at what had happened. But anyway, that's probably a discussion for another day. But if there aren't any more questions, I do have a motion. And I move the board amend the purchase agreement to delay principal payments by 1 year with an interest-only payment due in 2019, and regular payments will resume in 2020.
Thank you, Wayne.
I'll second it.
That motion has been seconded. Do we have any questions on that motion? And all in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Motion will carry. Good luck. Have fun. Next item we have on our agenda is the Center Creek Irrigation Company. This is I slipped one over, didn't I? Mosby Irrigation Company, and I think it's a Withdrawal, and I believe that's yours, Randy. Do you want to say anything about that? There he is. He's here. Anything to say about it?
You woke me up from my afternoon nap, sorry. Mosby Irrigation Company and Waterworks Irrigation Company are neighbor irrigation companies out in the Uintah Basin by La Pointe. They both submitted an application at the same time to pipe sections of their canals, and some of them are the joint canal. Their water users use water from both of the systems. So instead of having two separate applications, they just combined into one project. The White Rocks project, they decided to be the sponsor of the project because they applied for water smart or salinity funds and got those. And so that project's been completed. They used the system this year, and so the Mosby irrigation application is not needed. So we recommend that the board withdraw it from further action.
Well, I think we're good. I do know the project, familiar with it, and they've got it in place and it's working well. So based on that, is there any other questions? If not, I move that application number RE 374 be withdrawn from further consideration by the board.
Moved and seconded. Questions on that motion? And all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Are there any?
Aye.
Thank you. I keep forgetting you're out there in La La Land.
Well, that's all right. It catches up after a while.
Yeah. Anyway, that will be withdrawn then. Thank you very much. Thanks, Tom. I will move to the Center Creek Irrigation Company. Wayne, I believe this is your project again too. Russell will make a presentation. Rod, guess you're on again.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. A couple of years back, I don't have the exact date, the board approved a dam safety project upgrade for Center Creek Irrigation Company, their Center Creek Dam number 2. The purpose of the project was primarily to rehabilitate the downstream embankment of Center Creek Dam number 2. The entire project included the repair of the downstream embankment of that dam number 2, slip lining of the existing corrugated pipeline with HDPE pipe, and installing new outlet works on both dams number 2 and number 3. Since then, the Office of Dam most of that work has been completed, and the Office of Dam Safety is now requiring additional riprap be placed on the upstream slopes of both dams. So that increased the costs by a total of $34,000. So with dam safety projects providing mostly grant funds, and it's not the project applicant coming to us saying we want to do this, it's the Office of Dam Safety saying you need to do this. So they weren't invited to be here to explain why they needed to ask for more money. But anyway, as we show you here, this is where the dams are located up there above Heber Valley. And the committed cost sharing was $662,000 from the board, $73,000 as a loan from the board, so 100% from the board through grant and loan funds. And of course, they need $34,000 more, as shown in the proposed cost share here. So staff recommends the board commit an additional $30,000 as a grant and $4,000 as a loan, and amend the agreements to state the board will provide 90% of the project cost up to $692,000 as a dam safety grant, and 10% of the project cost up to $77,000 as a loan, which will be returned at 0% interest over 17 years with payments of approximately $4,600. This is staff's report.
Do you have any questions on that project?
So Todd, are you aware, has the Center Creek Irrigation Company, are they aware that this particular motion is going to be made and all of that?
Correct. Yeah, they were not happy that their cost is going to go up, their total repayments on the loan portion. But yeah, they are aware. Yeah.
Questions on this? Wayne, do you have any questions or ready for a motion?
No, I'm ready to make a motion when the board is.
I believe we're ready.
Okay. I move the board commit an additional $30,000 as a grant and $4,000 as a loan, and amend the agreement to state the board will provide 90% of the project cost up to $692,000 as a dam safety grant, and 10% of the project cost up to $77,000 as a loan, which will be repaid at 0% interest over 17 years with payments of approximately $4,600.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on that motion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed to that motion? Not, I guess they'll get to move on. Water under the bridge, right? We have some new applications. Action on these, we just Millville City, a city's water loan fund. We'll move on our agenda to the Lake Powell Pipeline Report. Joel will.
Thank you. Good to be with you again. Since we last talked a couple of weeks ago, we have filed the request to withdraw our FERC hydropower license application. That has a 14-day comment period on it, which should have ended yesterday, and so we anticipate hearing from them soon, possibly even today, as to the processing our withdrawal. Following that withdrawal of the application, we look forward to working with the Department of the Interior agencies to continue the work on the environmental impact statement and getting that finished up. And we're also continuing to coordinate with the other involved federal agencies, making sure they understand what this change might mean and how to continue to work together, including working with the tribes and local agencies as well. So there will be continued meetings as we continue to meet with some of these agencies, and we'll keep you updated. But for now, it's kind of waiting to see that FERC has accepted our withdrawal, and then hearing from the Department of Interior as to how they wish to proceed on that. So, but any questions on that?
Assign someone then to.
We anticipate them assigning a lead agency to continue on with this work.
Project? None. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We have a couple of guests with us. We'd like to make sure we recognize Con Baldwin. He stepped out. Well, hi. And Justin Atkinson, Project Manager for Sunrise. Welcome, Justin. Your faces, but thank you for being here. We're going to move on to a cloud seeding report. Jake here.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Someone.
Just a second. Yes.
Are we going to be going over any new information that wasn't covered in the first meeting this morning from this point on?
No, I don't think so, Wayne.
May I be excused from this phone conversation and wish all of you a happy day? And I'm sorry that I wasn't able to do my dance on top of the desk.
Well, darn.
Only if you catch your afternoon nap.
Yeah.
So I'll try and catch a couple more sessions here then at the AWWA.
Okay, thanks, Wayne, for being here.
Yes. You bet. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, Jake, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm a little less nervous now there's one less person in the meeting. So I'm here to give a report on the cloud seeding activities throughout the state during last season, which, in my opinion, was a darn good winter season.
You're taking credit for all that snow.
Well, I know there was quite a bit of news out there covering the snowpack, covering the full reservoirs, flooding, the ski resorts and activity there, and broken records. There was one particular article that really caught my attention. It was in Ski Utah, and the article was
basically talking about how Snowbird was open on weekends in June and had their closing day on the 4th of July. There were a lot of really great photographs I wanted to share, but they didn't meet my standard of modesty. So I haven't shown them. But something special about this article, it had this, oh, sorry. We humbly request that whatever snow sacrifices or dances were performed for Uluru last summer are repeated to ensure another record-smashing season in 2020. And apparently the author didn't know, what caused this, but I'm guessing the sacrifices are state funding. The ritual dances are filling the propane tanks and going out and starting the generators. And Uluru, they refer to the Norse god, just maybe Candace Hassenjaeger. Okay, so last season we had the 5 project areas which we have been active for several years now. There's the central and southern project areas, the high Uintahs in the orange there, the West Uintahs just beside there, and the northern Utah. Those are all the silver iodide projects. One propane project ran by Emory Water Conservancy District is down in near San Pete County in the yellow there in the central part of the state. But and something exciting was we had a 6th project area last year, which we call the Six Creeks area, which is encompasses the Salt Lake Valley and the Wasatch Mountains there. This had been an active program in the late 80s into the mid 90s, but was discontinued. They reached out to us and expressed an interest to, again, sponsor a program. So that was fired up this year. And just like to know Alta and Snowbird are in that project area. So here's a beautiful picture for you. This is a representation of data collected from snowtail sites around the state. And this is the condition at the end of April, showing the SWE values as a percent of the last 30 years. You can see how down in the southwestern part of the state, we reached just about twice as high, just about twice as much SWE as normal. And then there's kind of a gradient that extends northeastern up the state. So up around Salt Lake had about 160%, and then into northern Utah, Cache Valley, 130%. Everyone always wants to know, what did cloud seeding do? It's a challenging question to answer, but the experts and our consultants give a good, reasonable attempt at that, and we're trying alongside them to do even better. So one of the longest running programs in the central and southern projects, you can see estimate about a 3% increase last year. And in Tooele County, 9% increase. And down to the Six Creeks area, where we estimated about an 8% increase. The data's this method of evaluation is a little difficult with fewer years of data. So for the Western Uintah project, there's only 19 years of seeding, 11 years of control. And the Six Creeks obviously only has this one most recent season that were used in this evaluation. But you can see, again, there's sort of the gradient. The percent increase was lowest down in the southern part of the state and increased. So the northern part of the state, which had less overall relative precipitation, was benefited most by these cloud seeding projects, although that 3% for Southern and Central is a significant amount in terms of magnitude. Okay, this graph here gives a history of the funding of the project, starting back in 1974, and it does good. It tells a good history. You can see there in 1984 when suspension was in effect across the entire state because of flooding conditions. You can see that there's that the amount of funding increases in dry years and decreases during wet periods. You can see that starting in 1996, there's where the 50-50 cost share began. In 2007, you can see that Colorado Lower Basin state funding kicked in, and also that the state of Utah could spend more than $150,000. So that's shown. And importantly, I'd like to point out just the recent trend of increased spending. So a brief summary on the number of generating hours, as well as the number of storms which were seeded in each of the project areas. You can note there that the Central and High Uintah's project areas are the only ones that had storms seeded in November, and that's due to the funding from the lower basin states. It's what stands out there is the Central Southern project had almost 4 times the amount of generator hours as some of the other projects in March. Although it was nearly the same number of storms. And that's despite suspension criteria that were enacted, and that's mostly due to better storms, better seeding conditions that occurred last season down in the south and central part of the states with longer duration storms, but also because that is the largest area with the largest number of generators. So more generators equals more generator hours. We did suspend operations down in the south beginning in March, where the SUI value was 175% normal. We suspended operations for the remainder of the year. In the High Uintahs, we suspended on April 6th, for the areas around Strawberry Reservoir. And in the Six Creeks area, that was also suspended, though, only a week and a half early. I'm going to talk about our use of new suspension criteria, and we used that alongside the previous criteria this season so that we could compare the two. Okay, so summary of project costs, and as well as the local sponsors. The local sponsors are listed there on the left-hand side. The project costs are split equally between the sponsor and the board, and the totals are there. The subtotal for just the sponsors in the state of Utah can be seen there at about $560,000, which is just shy of our $40,000 shy of our maximum. Actually, for the state of Utah, you can see there we spent about $280,000, and our limit is $300,000, so just $20,000 short of our limit. And then the lower basin states, they're funding their significant portion, $151,000, for a total season expense of $710,000. I think you know about this already, but just to remind you that the lower Colorado River Basin states have
jointly agreed to cooperate in funding our cloud seeding program. They are interested primarily in the areas that contribute to runoff in the Colorado River Basin. So that includes portions of the southern and central areas and all of the high Uintah's project area. And their funding last year was used to extend the cloud seeding season. It's a little different depending on which project area. Their funding was used in the Emery County project to purchase additional propane, and they had, from funding in earlier years, they purchased icing rate meters, which are essential for the cloud seeding operators to help them decide when conditions are right for seeding a storm. And their funding was continued for calibrating those devices and then maintaining them and reporting them, or analyzing the data. And then something that was unusual that hadn't been done before was their funding was used for a Utah State University climate center study, which looked at helping us to optimize our program. And a little bit about that study. The goal is to make the cloud seeding program more efficient. And so in doing that, we asked the following questions. How often were conditions in the past year suitable for seeding? Meaning, were we able to, of the storms which were seedable, that had the right conditions, the right amount of water available, how many of those did we decide to seed? Can a high-resolution forecast model provide guidance that helps us become more efficient so that we're seeding the right storms? And could this model and this study lead to improved evaluation? Or, in other words, can this work? Can we find a way to help us understand what the actual effect of cloud seeding is? It's Dr. Binod Pokerell at the Utah Climate Center, and the work from this, he's finalizing now and will be available in autumn, or at the end, probably in November. And so his report will be available. He's writing he's having an article published in a peer-reviewed journal, and this is one of the products that the Utah Climate Center is producing. So this website is public. It's available to anyone who wants to use it, though we don't expect that anyone besides us and the operators will be interested in it. It's out there. It's simple by design. You can see there's the state there, and then there are several lines which represent cross sections like that's shown on the right-hand side. Those cross sections were through discussion chosen as to provide the most useful information to operators, covering the entire state and covering all of the project areas. You can see we have a couple of cross sections up in Utah in the Bear River watershed, because we're interested in knowing about conditions there. And then basically what it does this is just a prototype, but on the right-hand side, it provides the type of weather information that's useful to meteorologists and the operators to help them decide when it's right to start those generators. Okay. So last year, here's a breakdown of the actual costs from the lower Colorado River Basin states. About $151,000, and our proposal for lower basin funding for this coming season. You can see following the trend in the previous bar plot I showed, they're ever willing to spend more and more money to help this project. And so the plan is to fund the regular extensions and to fund the important maintenance and calibration of the equipment that helps the operators. And then two important things there at the bottom. They'll be giving continued more funding for continued study by USU so they can work on improving that model and helping us to answer those questions. And we're going to be doing, building off of previous work, a feasibility study in the high Uintah project area to see if we can improve efficiency by moving generators, perhaps by adding remote generators to the repertoire of equipment. So staff recommends that the Board of Water Resources commit up to $150,000 for the 2019-2020 operational cloud seeding program with a maximum state cost share of 50% with local sponsors.
Are there any questions or comments?
Just a comment. I'm glad to see that the Lower Basin States is still participating in the program. I happened to be on that particular board when we put this together, and glad to see it's still working, and it's a good project.
Yeah, thanks for your work on that.
Just as a side note, I think this is a great program, but every time that I hear how all of our reservoirs fill throughout the state, I leaned over to Norm. Severe Bridge Reservoir, the largest privately owned reservoir in the state of Utah, reached a maximum elevation of 46% this year. So not all of the reservoirs filled. 46% was Severe Bridge's high level this year. So let's put some more of these around Severe Bridge Reservoir on the drainage.
Another question, comment?
Well, and there was some discussion in our briefing meeting about how long this $150,000 amount has been in place. Going back, Eric, how long?
That's not very long sometimes.
So it's a whole long time. But if the state were to increase, do we have the ability to increase the state's portion? And if so, would that, and is that a mandatory 50% cost share, whatever amount the state puts out, then the cost share would have to match 50%? So
Kyle,
increase our, go ahead.
the way I would see that happening is we would just, if we're talking about 50,000 next year, we would ask the board to commit $200,000 instead of 150. It's not in code as to what that amount is, and
That's just an arbitrary, that's just a number that the board has arrived at
Yes.
over the years.
yes.
Do you have a comment?
Yeah, that was the original amount that was funded for cloud seeding projects until 2007. When we got the additional $150,000 from the sales tax monies, which then allowed us to authorize up to the $300,000 and the 50% cost share, if that makes sense.
I am a little bit confused then, up to 300,000, but we're only putting 150 in, is that right?
From the board's money.
Okay.
There's
another 150.
There's another 150 that comes in directly from the sales tax,
Okay.
1/16 cent.
And is that 300 a solid cap?
That's what has been funded to this point in time. If you all determine that you would like to fund that at a higher amount, you can. Now, as was discussed in the briefing meeting, we have put in a building block request to increase that amount from our restricted funds.
Right now, that's staff's recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, another comment, and I'm sorry that Mr. Baldwin left, but as I mentioned in briefing meeting this morning, we were, I was telling the board how the state of Idaho encourages Utah to more aggressively cloud seed and how beneficial it is for power generation on the Snake River for Idaho Power. And I have had some very brief discussions with Con Baldwin about Pacific Corp participating in increasing cloud seeding up in the Bear River Basin to improve both Bear Lake elevations and power generation for Rocky Mountain Power Pacific Corp. Additionally, it is my humble opinion that water users or industries and recreationists on the Great Salt Lake would greatly benefit for increased cloud seeding, that they are continually concerned about development in the state, and this is one potential answer to Salt Lake levels.
That would be greater than just the Bear River Basin also, so.
Exactly. And then, Mr. Chairman, finally, as I am a contract employee with North American Weather, I will declare a conflict of interest on this upcoming motion. Yeah, I'm paid approximately, well, I'm up to $100 now, Randy, so. Well, it's 50 unless they work you really hard, and then it goes to 100.
Any other questions? I think you're ready to make a motion?
Yeah, I'm ready to make a motion. I'd like to move that we, as a board, commit up to $150,000 for the 2019-2020 operational cloud seeding program with a maximum state cost share of 50% with the local sponsors.
Thank you. That seconded? Been moved and seconded. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries.
And you probably need to note that Wayne.
Wayne is not here.
Oh, yeah, I know that, but
Thank you very much. Let's see, we're going to just eliminate the planning report then?
Yep.
All right, okay.
Yeah. With your permission.
Go ahead. You want to keep talking, you just keep talking.
Your permission and my apology, you have to listen to me a little more. So I mentioned before the cloud seeding suspension. So we have, every cloud seeding program has certain indicators to where operators understand that they, moving beyond those thresholds, could either pose a potential hazard to users downstream, or it could render the program inefficient because they're spending money to seed clouds when the supply has already reached kind of its saturation level. So there are this suspension criteria is important, and it's something that throughout the season we continuously monitor, and as a situation arises we monitor it ever closely, day by day, watching forecasts, and we're in contact with our operators. So that's what I'm going to be discussing here briefly, I hope, is about our cloud seeding suspension criteria. Now, this is not my work, just my fortunate pleasure to present to you. So it was done by, you can see several people here at the Division of Water Resources, and also Randy Julender, formerly at the NRCS. So I can answer, if you have any questions, I may be able to answer them, but for any really difficult ones, they can be found in the official report, which is being finalized. So, okay, here is a table that's comparing the criteria from Utah, Colorado, and Nevada. Note that the criteria changes on the first of each month of the season. And those percentages represent are the
snow water equivalent as a percent of normal. So this is this criteria is guidance to help us know when we're approaching a threshold which over which we may, or around which we may want to suspend operations. And this white box on the right-hand side, we've noted several challenges related to the criteria that we have there in the Utah column. And one is that Utah has no reference there below it. You see Colorado has Wilson Water 2015, Nevada has Desert Research Institute 2006. So Utah didn't have one. We couldn't find the citation or the report that was regarding the study that was done to establish this criteria. They were done over 50 years ago. They've been using this criteria. And that means that there's really no analysis or argument or evidence of what would happen if these thresholds were reached. We don't know if it means we would have too much water or too little. We couldn't determine that. Another thing is that these percentages are based on mean values over, what's considered normal. What's considered normal is what happened in the last 30 years, and so those can change as time moves on. And lastly, this was a single number for the entire state. And as you well know, you represent the wide range of hydrologic conditions of our state. So we were concerned that a single value for the entire state may not be suitable. Yes, sir.
So for 200%, even though if maybe one area hasn't got any snow, but if the state average is 200%, it's shut off everywhere.
Okay. No, I misunderstood the question. So it's still, the 200% is set at the entire state. So anywhere in the state, the 200% is the criteria, but it was based on project area and site area. Is that right, Todd? You want to add something?
Yeah, as the guy that used to do cloud seeding way back a little bit ago and got really good at doing suspensions when it happened in our real wet years, we would apply this statewide criterion. What Jake said is we have not been able to find the work that was done. We do know that there was a group out of USU that worked together on developing this criteria, but we did not be able to find the paperwork behind it. This has been in place since the early 70s. The 200 down to 175 is what's been applied across the board, but we look at it in region areas, and in some instances we've looked at it in specific drainages and tried to suspend in those areas versus allow the areas around, like what you were talking about earlier, and still try to run the operation in where it was not over the criteria.
And so that type of expert judgment and targeted assessment of the criteria is still being done. It's just that they didn't have the objective criteria that they were using as a base they were uncertain about.
Well, and we would look at soil moisture, we'd look at reservoir capacity, we'd look at all sorts of different things and the forecast out a few days and weeks and go from there.
So I'm going to summarize the method that was used to derive the new criteria. And it's basically this, that the first step was to identify key stream flow points where records were good, where stream flow was extremely important, and where that stream flow, those stream flow measurements were where the stream flow at that site was being affected by snowfall that's also being measured. So we obtained the stream flow records from the USGS, and then for that contributing drainage area, we identified all of the snowtail sites measuring the snowpack that contributes to runoff at that stream flow point. Those a relationship was then established between the stream flow and the snowpack at these sites in the watershed. The sites were then ranked according to which was the best indication of what the resultant spring runoff would be at that point. And then a critical stream flow volume was selected so that it would maximize the historical supply of water, but reduce a risk of oversupply. And so here at Logan, this is an example. The blue line shows the cumulative annual volume of stream flow, and as it varies, begins in 1979 and goes until 2017. The black horizontal line there indicates the average cumulative annual volume, and that red line at top represents a 95th percentile. And so you can see that by making that the target, we wouldn't want to stop seeding operations up to that point, meaning we try to maximize the amount of water available for supply, but the volume above that line indicates when there may be too much or may be hazardous. Or that beyond that point, the supply is really full. There's no point in seeding anymore. So that's what we call the critical season volume. And so that is done for several stream flow locations in each project area. And then each snowtail site then has a particular ranking, a particular criteria for that corresponding stream flow point. And this is an example of the results. So it's a bit, it may be a bit misleading putting these values here as comparison, because whereas the old values in black were statewide, these red values are site-specific and project area specific. But this is for the one location in Cache Valley on Logan River at a particular snowtail site. And so you can see the difference there, that it's actually higher. The threshold has been raised, that we wouldn't suspend operations based on this criteria until we exceeded the 200%. And it does get reduced each month, which follows the examples of the other states and of our previous criteria, but the change isn't as much. So, though it does change from 230% down to 178%, and that is just about the same amount, 50% difference, but it stays higher than all of the previous criteria. Oh, sorry. But importantly, what I'd like to see the difference between the previous Utah criteria and what our new criteria is that now we have this citation. So now we have a report which helps us, helps everyone in the future who use this understand the origin of these numbers, and it allows us to make more informed decisions. So one of the products that's used to assess all of this information, because now there's quite a bit more information at each site and throughout each project area. With the help of Adam Clark and Craig Miller, we developed this map, which is automatically generated every day during the season, and it retrieves the SNOTEL information from the NRCS website, and then it populates in this map, and it has points that show, it shows the generator locations, and then it shows the SNOTEL sites. And there's an indication, the color of those stars indicate whether the SWE value is in exceedance of our new criteria. So there's a lot of nuance now that didn't exist before that we're able to display in a map like this to help us make real-time decisions. So in summary, what was done in this study was an evaluation of the existing statewide suspension criteria. We found that they found that it was too general, having a single value that was the same across the entire state, and that without having evidence to support that criteria value, that wasn't favorable or desired. So they updated to new project area specific SWE-based criteria. So this takes into consideration watershed conditions and history at the SNOTEL site and the direct relationship between snowpack at a SNOTEL site and the resultant runoff. It allows for the augmentation of the seasonal supply up to a critical runoff value. And importantly there, the new criteria captures the hydrological variability that we see across the state of Utah. So our staff's recommendations are that just as before, this new criteria that's based on a SWE index is not the only piece used to determine whether to suspend during the storm. The actual conditions of the storm are important, whether there's extreme weather, if there's a risk of blizzard, if there's forecasts on the resultant flooding, all of those come into play. And prior to seeding an event, we look at reservoir levels in the project area, soil moisture contents, the amounts of precipitation in other seasons, and what's flowing in the rivers. We recommend that we consider updating this every 5 years, and that there are quite a few future opportunities that how this can be improved. And so, well, no, sorry, I wasn't sure. Basically, our recommendation is to use this criteria going forward in the coming season and in future seasons. And that's staff's report. Are there questions about the study or the process? I have questions, but right now it's probably not the right time. All right. I'll be glad to talk with you about it.
Very much. We'll move on our agenda then to the director's report. And we'll turn the
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I don't have many things to talk about other than tell you that on the Colorado River, discussions are turning towards the revision of the 2007 guidelines, which have been in place since 2007, and to be expiring in 2026, and by the end of next year, we need to have begun the discussions amongst the 7 states and the other entities involved as to what those revised guidelines will look like. And so Todd and Scott McGettigan and I attended a conference in Santa Fe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that was the discussion or that was the direction that things were turning, and they had a number of panel discussions with the states and the tribes and others that are involved, just trying to get a feel perhaps for what the discussions might look like. And there's a couple more events coming up yet this fall where similar things will be talked about. So we look ahead and try to think what things would be beneficial to the state of Utah and to the Upper Basin states as a whole. And Robert King, who used to be our Colorado River guru, of course, retired this last summer, but he stays involved and came up and actually has visited with us several times. And each month we have a coordination meeting amongst the people in natural resources that deal with Colorado River. Robert came to that, so we try to get what information we can from him, but talking with him and trying to figure out what we might be looking for. There's a number of things that I think we should ask for. One involves where the measurement of the water that is moved from the upper basin to the lower basin is done. And so there's some problems that we see in the measuring point right now, which is the dam. It's probably the most accurate place to measure it, but it doesn't take into account all the water that comes around the dam through the rock and makes its way back into the river. Adjustments to the balancing tiers that we think would help hold Powell up just a little bit more than it has. And Powell, by the way, is operating very well considering the many years of drought that we've been in, I believe. How the Mexican deficiency is accounted for and how much water the upper basin really owes to that, I think is worthy of discussion. And many other things. And so those things are on our radar and things that are starting to get talked about. As far as calendaring, there's a few things I want to bring up. On October 29th, the Utah Water Users Association has their annual water summit. Board members, we'd be happy to pay your registration fee for that if that's something that you would like to attend. And if you would let Lindsay know, that's in Provo on the 29th. It's an all-day deal. We've invited the board members to go to that before. The other thing is our next board meeting, which will be December 5th. And that's also the day that we would plan to have the board's Christmas party. And so what we're looking at is the morning would be dedicated to the meetings, both the briefing and the board meeting. And then we would, from there, go to lunch and have the party. And so your spouses are invited. Lindsay will get with you and figure out if you'll be attending, and we hope you will be. It's always a nice event to be with you. So that, and then as we look to the next year, we'll be getting the proposed dates for next year to you in December for your action, but just for your note, the first meeting that we're looking at for 2020 would be January 23rd. So I'll just give that to you as our thought for the moment, and then you can act on the dates at the next meeting. So, Mr. Chairman, that is my report.
Comment on?
Based on the cloud seeding report, did we need to take action on any recommendation there, or just that's the recommendation?
You took the action on the 150,000.
I'm talking
but
about
on the suspension criteria.
Criteria, if that needed action.
I don't think there's an action needed, is there? Yeah.
Just it's the new criteria we'll be using. If you'd like to take an action on that, then bless it, you're welcome to.
If it's not needed, it's not necessary.
Understand. Anything else? If not, we'll adjourn. 3 o'clock. Thank you very much for attending.